Janam Jana Shavakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamapam Dadati Svavantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sahagana Raghunathavitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Adita Shri Shakha Vivamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopyasya Gopyakanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sudere Ramani Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So maybe you can introduce Antonio also with it.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Actually here devotees from 4 different temples have come here. So here is Bhakti Krishna Prabhu. He is the leader in ISKCON Sheshatripura temple and he has come with his team of devotees there. Abhishek Prabhu, Prashant Prabhu, and our Vijay Prabhu, Abhimanyu Prabhu, so they are there. Sheshatripura. Here is Hari Kshetra Prabhu. With his devotees Achyut Arjun Sakha Prabhu and Ami Vatsan Prabhu is there, Ami Madhav Prabhu and Koti Shashi Gauranga Prabhu. So they are there and they are from Charan Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Subandha Govind Prabhu. So he is from Shri Lakshmi Narasimha Temple, Narasimha Girdhari Mandir. Murali Shyam Prabhu has also come. He is in a meeting. He is in a meeting above. And from Kerpuram we have 2 devotees, Vedi Madhav Prabhu and Kiran Prabhu. They are coming. Actually, many of us are meeting for the first time. So after your class, we are going to have introduction session where we get to know each other. Because hardly we get together in Bangalore. So the first time we are having this gathering. So we thought with your auspicious presence we can have the meeting, we begin the meeting and then we can get to know each other and then other programs. Hare Krishna. And we have Banamali Guru and Karunamurti Guru, myself from this temple. And Swayam Prakash Guru, he is in Vrindavan, Govardhan, he will be coming after a week.
And what should I speak about?
Basically how we can better serve in brahmachari ashram lifelong and have contributed meaningfully to the mission of Srila Prabhupada, and also the importance of coming together and working together. So these are the two topics which we wanted to enlighten us on. Everybody knows Maharaj. So I thought there's no need to introduce. So His Holiness Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Maharaj is basically from Russia. Actually, he was born in Tashkent. So when I heard the name Tashkent, I felt that's the place from where the foreign invasions started in India. Ghori, Ghazni, they all came. We are reading in history books, and they destroyed the Indian culture. But when I saw Maharaj glorifying the Vedic culture and distributing and spreading everywhere, and in the same country where he was there, and I was also reading Indudhan Maharaj diary where he was going and preaching in Tashkent, in the heart of Tashkent, doing radio programs, and in his diary he writes, so very inspired to see that even in such places preaching is happening. And yesterday Maharaj was telling that he came to Krishna consciousness in Moscow University, where one of his friends got a Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad book, and got connected to Krishna consciousness. It was a very tough time. So if you want to know the details, then you can hear yesterday evening's lecture. So Maharaj very graphically described the beginning days of Russian preaching. And Maharaj extensive preaching in Russia, and he was the GBC there for decades. His guest Patri was saying that Maharaj is like, he breaks open the door and gives way for the preaching to happen. And so he was very instrumental in preaching in Russia. He is also initiating spiritual master, and he is not able to recollect many things Maharaj, but he is very proficient in Sanskrit, and he is studying learning Sanskrit because he wants to translate some of the books of acharyas, previous acharyas. He mentioned 2-3 names of the books which specifically he wants to translate and make that accessible and available to all the devotees of the Gaudiya Vaishnava community. And along with him we have 2 more devotees coming here, Anuttama Prabhu and Anupama Govinda Prabhu. So they're both assisting Maharaj in his preaching and travels. So we welcome His Holiness Bhakti Vijnana Maharaj to the program by chanting once Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari Nirvisharisha Srinavani Paschatani So I'm very happy to be here with you, serving in Bangalore. It was actually my long cherished desire to come to Bangalore, but I was too busy all the time. Now, Krishna mercifully arranged pandemic. Gave me the opportunity to come here, and I'm very grateful to all the local devotees, Narahari Chaitanya Prabhu, Swarna Gaurari Prabhu, Anamali Govinda Prabhu, other devotees who are facilitating my stay here. Okay, so I will try to speak a little bit on these topics, very important topics for every one of us. First topic about brahmachari life. It's a very beautiful way of living, not completely sometimes we make it complicated because we like to live a complicated life. But the beauty of this way of life is that it's simple. It can become very simple. It should be actually very simple. And this simplicity gives a lot of time for very important spiritual activities, like studying Srila Prabhupada's books, teaching others. Recently I spoke with one disciple of mine, just a couple of days back, and he complained to me and he told me my wife basically dumped me and we're divorced now. I said, it's good, now you can study Prabhupada's books. Before you get married second time, take this advantage. So you can be married to Prabhupada's books, or you can be married otherwise. You can choose between the two. So, but there are of course, some difficulties. Everywhere there are some difficulties which are balancing the advantages. The advantages are definitely there, they're obvious. It's a simple life, it can be very, you don't have to be too much concerned about, your living facilities. Actually, in Sanskrit, women called stri, and stri means expand. So, as a brahmachari, you don't have to expand. But you have to expand. You have to expand preaching. You don't have to expand your facilities for living. You don't have to expand your expenses and your income. You don't have to expand your family, but still you have to expand. You have to expand preaching. You have to invite other people to Krishna consciousness. But the difficulties, of course, is also there. The grihastha life, family life, is a very beautiful arrangement for people to fulfill the emotional needs. Because every one of us essentially is emotional being. Srila Prabhupada puts it in a beautiful way. He said, we're all pleasure-seeking beings. We're all pleasure-seeking living entities. This seeking of pleasure is the innate nature of any soul. And we are enjoying, we're experiencing pleasure through different emotions which we have. So essentially, we are emotional beings. Sometimes human beings are called rational, and there's some element of rationality is there, but essentially we're not rational, we're emotional. We may pretend to be rational, but deep down, emotions are much stronger force which drives our action and our, even way of thinking. When we're experiencing some emotion, it alters our way of thinking. It alters our perception of life, perception of different people. And then we rationalize. Emotions are primary element in our being, in our consciousness. And then rationalization is coming afterwards. Different thoughts, different ideas, different conceptions, but basically we are emotional. And therefore we are here in this movement. It is a very emotional movement. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu engaged and invokes spiritual emotions. So Grihastha life is for this. Grihastha life gives you some emotional fulfillment or emotional closeness, feelings of emotional closeness. And if in brahmachari life we don't have this somehow or other, then brahmachari life after some time will become a burden. Brahmacharis have to, it's a prime duty of brahmacharis to take care of their emotional needs. Because there is nobody nearby who will take care of it. So you have to take care of it yourself. In the Grihastha life, it's a natural arrangement. The wife is there, the children is there, relatives are there, and you know, and there is plenty of positive emotions and there is plenty of negative emotions as well. So there is no shortage of emotions in family life. But brahmacharis, they may become, you know, little dry. Brahmachari life may become emotionally drained. I mean, brahmachari's heart or whatever. Due to this, you know, due to the lack of natural fulfillment of these emotional needs. Unless we make sure that this element of this feature is there in our life. And for that you need close friendship with other brahmacharis, because friendship is a rasa. Friendship is emotion. Friendship is exchange of emotions. But friendship has to be really deep, because friendship can be shallow. Again, in Sanskrit there are two words, or more words, Sakha, Mitra, Suhrit. So Mitra is basically this shallow kind of relationship. Just friendly relationship. But it's very shallow. There's no depth in this sort of relationship. And Suhrit is this word in Sanskrit which denotes a very deep and fulfilling emotional relationship between two friends, between two male devotees. And Suhrit means basically that you have to open your heart completely. You have to really convey your difficulties in spiritual life, and you know, this is what Srila Rupa Goswami explains in the Nectar of Instruction. He says, Guhyamakyati Prichhati. You're confidential with other person. And you know, these close friends, they cannot be plenty. It can only be just a few, but they have to be there in our life. If there is no this close friendship, then different problems which are there, emotional unfulfillment and everything else, will force us to think about changing this way of life or changing our status, our condition. And we may be forced to do it. So this is one thing which is extremely important to and any deep relationship basically means relationship is a job. Relationship with women is a full-time job. Relationship, you know, any relationship need investment. We need to invest time, we need to invest our energy, we need to invest certain, you know, certain processes into this. Without paying this price, investing into the relationship by, you know, consciously meeting with other person, you know, opening the heart, trying to listen to this other person, trying to understand, trying to really come close to him. Relationship will not become the way they should be. They will remain on a very shallow platform, and they will not bring any fulfillment to our heart. So this is one thing which can be said about this. And of course, if we, do something together, if we experience some difficulties together, this is a very binding process. If we do some daring, things together, that will help us to come closer to other people. From the very beginning, when I once asked Srila Radhanath Maharaj about this, why some people remain brahmachari, why some people cannot remain brahmachari, and he said that this is the main point, the point of emotional fulfillment. And he said also a very interesting thing in this regard. He said that in brahmachari life, besides the close friendship which should be there, I remember once Gaur-Gopal Prabhu came to Russia and he was staying in our temple. And he was preaching, he was very active, doing this and that. And at one point I came to his room, he was sitting there, and I saw him crying. And I asked him, why are you crying? He said, today is Govinda's birthday, another brahmachari from Chowpatty temple. And I remember him and I'm crying about him. So this is the, sort of close relationship which are there. He is far away from Chowpatty, but he remembers about this brahmachari Govinda Prabhu, and he's crying by remembering about him. This is the ideal, actually. But besides that, Radhanath Maharaj said very interesting thing in this regard. He said that another way to fulfill the emotional needs for brahmacharis is to preach. But preach on a very personal level as well. Sometimes we preach in a kind of impersonal way, or sometimes we just fulfill something which we already fulfilled 100 times, repeat something which we already repeated many times before, and we call it preaching. It's not preaching, it's a parrot repetition. But if we again try to touch people's heart, because actually what is preaching? Preaching is heart-to-heart contact. It's not just, sometimes Prabhupada called preaching propaganda. He said we're doing our propaganda of our Krishna consciousness or Krishna consciousness movement. Yeah, you can say it's propaganda in one sense, but propaganda has this connotation that it's little brainwashing sort of thing. But preaching is something different. Preaching is when you're consciously praying and trying to really say something which would touch the heart of a person, which would really go deep into person's heart or person's. And Krishna will give you proper words, proper expressions, everything. It's just a question of praying. We have in Russia one very successful, perhaps the most successful preacher, outreach person, who has literally millions of followers. And his, social media, there are a few million people listening to his lectures. And by far the majority of devotees nowadays become devotees because they started listening to his lectures. He's very, very famous. He's preaching some sort of, indirect things, healthy way of life, Ayurveda, this, that, so many other things. And, from strictly philosophical point of view, especially from an orthodox Gaudiya Vaishnava, what he says may not be, the pure Krishna consciousness. Definitely not pure Krishna consciousness. There is a lot of different mixtures there. But nevertheless, people become devotees, not only just a couple of people, you know, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people become devotees just by listening to his classes. And I once asked him, what is your secret? How do you manage to do this? And he said, for many years I was praying to Srila Prabhupada to become an instrument in his hands. For many, many years I was just praying to him to become an instrument of his compassion. You know, I don't know what I'm saying, whatever I'm saying, but it's the power of his prayers, basically, to Prabhupada. And because of these prayers, he became empowered. Because there's no doubt about it. He definitely, he's a disciple of Lokanath Maharaj. His name is Odari Dhamma. He became empowered by Srila Prabhupada because of his sincere desire. You know, many people criticize him for his unorthodox way of doing it. Ultimately, in the eyes of Krishna, this is not important. What is important is the sincerity of the heart, which is there, and sincerity and eagerness, sincerity of desire, sincerity of desire, his eagerness to give people some Krishna consciousness, to give people some understanding of what life is all about. And literally, what happens when people start listening to him, they change their life completely. He has the power to change people's hearts. Why? Because of this prayer, and because of this prayerful mood, he was able to touch people's heart. You know, he's not just transmitting an information. You know, preaching can become this transmission of information, intellectual exchange. You're saying something very smart and intelligent, and somebody is listening and saying, yeah, he's smart, but I'm smarter. So this is what people would react. But if people see somebody who is really sincere and who really wants to give them something, then they will become very grateful, and something will happen, something significant will happen. And therefore, Radhanath Maharaj said this thing, that actually preaching is a very emotionally fulfilling activity. It's not just a question of studying something, it's a question of touching people's heart. And when you touch people's heart, you feel their emotions, and you also you get this exchange. Because as soon as you touch people's heart, and people's hearts also become known to you, open to you. We have another preacher who is also very successful, very, very successful outreach person. And he told another story, very interesting story in this regard. Recently I heard it. He said that once he was invited to a home program by a group of very, very rich people. One rich person who liked his way of speaking and preaching, he invited his friends. And his friends with families came, and it was a little long back when, all of a sudden Russian people, they became divided. There were some very rich people and some very poor people. So that was really rich people in a big mansion, and a few families are there. And he said that I started speaking, and I didn't know how to relate to these people. Because they are, it's a different species of life. When people are very rich, they have different way of thinking, different way of seeing everything. And he said, I was not so familiar with this, with this sort of people. And he said, I started praying inside, Krishna, please give me the words. Like Prabhupada, when he came to America, he was also praying in this Markine Bhagavata Dharma. Make my words sweet to them. Make me speak something which they will understand. These people are so much covered by this ignorance and passion. How the words of Srimad Bhagavatam will reach their hearts. That was Prabhupada's prayer. And that's actually the prayer of any preacher. The complete surrender to the Supreme Lord and complete dependence on the Supreme Lord in this matter of making me successful in this humble attempt to serve you and the humble attempt to preach your message. So this devotee, he told me, he said that I started saying something, and I was saying something which I spoke before on many occasions, some kind of introductory speech to Krishna consciousness. And all of a sudden, I saw that all the ladies in this audience started crying. He somehow rather touched their hearts. They started crying. He said something which touched them. And he said at this moment of time, a lot of the influx of compassion overflooded my heart. And I spoke, and it was a very successful program at the end. Again, this is what I'm making the point. I'm making the point that preaching should be a very emotionally fulfilling activity. And this is the saving grace for brahmacharis, because as I said, brahmachari life can become really dry, and that's the main reason why people change their minds, even if in the beginning they wanted to dedicate their life to spiritual practice and preaching of Krishna consciousness. So that's another essential element. If we preach, but preach in a very deep way, so that our emotions are invoked, and the emotions of people whom we preach also invoked, then it will become very important. Like in this case, he saw that his words have the emotional impact, and he also became very emotional. So that's how this contact works, how this contact of heart to heart works during the preaching. Of course, some people are naturally more emotional, some people naturally less emotional. It's not that you should imitate and now you should, become a Bollywood preaching star, evoking emotions all the time. But, I'm making the point that we should not be mechanical in our preaching, because this is a danger. When you preach all the time, there is a great danger that you become a little mechanical in this regard. I know it myself. Preacher sometimes, he doesn't read the books. He only reads the books which he can speak later. He doesn't listen to the lecture. He only listens to the points which he can repeat himself. I'm sure you all know this. You have all your preacher's notebooks with the good points which you can repeat. But that's actually a mechanical approach to preaching. You can use these techniques, so to speak. You can use these points which may be impressive, but ultimately, what is impressive? Impressive when you speak from the heart. Impressive when you speak something which is deeply, which you lived yourself, and which you can really, can really give you life for what you're saying. You really, your whole life is there in what you're saying. So that's another little point to develop this initial idea, is that the brahmachari life has to be emotionally fulfilling, otherwise it's difficult. That's one difficulty in brahmachari life. Another difficulty in brahmachari life is, of course, we live in the temples, and sometimes there is shortage of people. Sometimes there is not enough manpower there, and brahmachari basically means that he has to do everything and more. he has to do whatever is necessary. And it may become, at one point it may become, and because we are active and young, sometimes passionate people, we also like to do more. I was speaking with Guru Shyam the other day, and I was quoting to him one devotee. I don't remember who told me this, but he put it very nicely. He said that, you can be, when we do so many things, and when we are successful in doing so many things, we, internally we think, I'm a superhuman. I have so much energy, so much intelligence, I'm this, and look at me, I can do everything at once. So somebody told me that you can be superhuman in 20, you can be superhuman in, oh yeah, I remember who it was, one doctor, one devotee doctor. He said, you can be superhuman up to your 45. But by 50, you have to become human again. So, sometimes we used to, play with this high energies, and we like it. I'm doing this, and if it's a good brahmachari life, there is a lot of energy involved. There is a lot of enthusiasm. You're doing this, you're doing that. So many other things, but we have to be careful, because another danger is this emotional burnout, when we become burned. And the cause, the reason for this emotional burnout, for this experience, is the chronic stress. And we sometimes don't notice how the chronic stress creeps in. We live this busy life, we have so many engagements, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have the full schedule, we're preaching, we're doing this, and we like it. Because it's nice to be completely busy, there is no there is no time for Maya, there is no room for Maya in your mind. It's good. But we have to be very careful, and we have to notice how our mind reacts, because sometimes, because of this busyness, total busyness and stress and too many obligations which we ourselves took it, because brahmacharis means we are more or less self-engaged, right? And being self-engaged and being energetic, we sometimes overburden ourselves with too many engagements. And initially we don't notice it, but what happens, because of too much pressures from different sides, too much obligations which we took upon our shoulders, we become stressed, and the result of stress is that we lose this natural happiness in life. The duty of a brahmachari is to be happy. If you feel that there is somehow or other this natural happiness vanished from your life, is not there anymore, the natural, enthusiasm, natural feeling of happiness, then you're doing something wrong. And it basically means that there is some ego involved. The main root cause of any stress is this ego. I'm the doer. Ahankara vimudatma. I'm doing this. Look at me. I'm superhuman. I can do this. I can do that. So when this element of ego is imperceptibly contaminating our consciousness and contaminating whatever we're doing in one sense, then the stress sooner or later will come to our life. And this burden of stress, the stress builds up internally. And when it builds up, after a certain time, you're doing the same thing, but you don't feel the same happiness as before. This is the subjective experience which you may notice sometimes. I'm doing the same thing. Before it was so nice, and it was so fulfilling, and it was so ecstatic. And now I'm doing the same thing, and it doesn't bring any happiness to me. And at that moment of time, this is the moment of time when the lust enters our mind. Because when the mind is not happy, then, the lust is there, and he says, I'm here. Look at me. I'm ready to make you happy. So this is a simple way to become happy. You're not happy, just admit it. So this is the ideas which will come. Some sort of lust will creep in due to the chronic stress. So one of the duties of brahmachari, if he wants to lead the fulfilling life of a brahmachari, especially lifelong brahmachari, and then he has to basically take rest, which we usually don't have. I mean, I don't mean 6 hours at night. I mean some holidays or some sort of time when you're not too busy with all your duties, when you're just relaxed, maybe with your friends somewhere in the nature or somewhere. I don't know how to arrange this, but it has to be. Every now and then it has to be there. Otherwise, this channel should be there. Otherwise, for some time, especially when you're young, you may not notice it, it may not be so prominent, but after some time, it will definitely give you some negative ideas. So brahmacharis, believe me or not, they have to have holidays. Maybe I will be kicked out from this temple for saying this. They have to have some vacations, some little, time when they are not so stressed. It's important. Of course, service. We always serve. We always, chant the holy name. We always do something, but we have to also have some time for ourselves to recharge our emotional batteries. So that's the negative side. But it's the same topic. First topic, how to become positively emotionally fulfilled. Another side of it is that how to avoid the emotional burnout when negative emotions build up inside and ultimately overwhelm you or overflood your consciousness and deprive you from this way of life. So that's the second part of this little presentation. I guess if there's any questions for this, then I will speak about the coordination, right? Because you said these two topics I should touch. Spoke about this. Yeah.
What about seeking these emotions through devotional service? We need friends, but that the Bhakti, Devarvit Maharaj one lecture was the Bhakti Bhav. In that he says that many times we do devotional service mechanically and we forget to experience that mode of servitorship to the Lord. So in brahmachari, like, what is, like, is it also a replacement?
It is, definitely. What we are talking about, the experience of spiritual emotions. But I was specifically touching upon more accessible emotions, because spiritual emotions may or may not be there, especially in the beginning. You know, you may not be immediately ecstatic, you know, I'm serving the Lord, oh my goodness, and so on. It's there, but it's a high level. So purposefully I was speaking about also this material side, which is also necessary. Of course, you know, otherwise there's a lot of spiritual emotions as well, but from the practical experience we can see that despite of experiencing all these high spiritual emotions, brahmacharis live brahmachari life and go to family life. So perhaps there's something lacking in this regard. Yes.
Talking about especially brahmachari ashram, it is the present day brahmachari ashram, they are more exposed to other things also. That is, their counterparts, their own friends, they may be grasthas. But how to sustain the brahmachari ashram there? Because we are mixing with so many people.
And therefore they have to have, first of all, very close association. See, mixing is not a problem. Bhakti Vijnana Thakur in Bhakti Loka, he says a very interesting thing. He says, association only becomes, he speaks about asat sanga, this jhana sanga. In this chapter about jhana sanga, he says that association only becomes, you know, and the natural question comes, jhana sanga, we always have jhana sanga. We always associate with ordinary people, with people who may be not so spiritual, you know, and being in this community, we again associate with too many people. So Bhakti Vijnana Thakur says that, you know, this association becomes contaminating or detrimental to one's spiritual advancement only when you become dependent on the person with whom you're associating. And dependence can be different. Dependence doesn't have to be economical dependence. Dependence can be emotional dependence. If you are emotionally dependent on somebody, you know, then for sure you will be heavily influenced by his way of thinking, his way of life, and you will naturally go his way. But we can associate, we can be friendly, but at the same time not be affected by this association too much, because we are not dependent, specifically emotionally dependent on this association. We are, you know, we are giving to them, we are not taking. You know, the association is usually two-way exchange, but not necessarily, you know. It only becomes two-way exchange or whatever, it influences us when we are dependent on this association. So, and therefore, we have to be dependent, but we have to be dependent from people whom we like to be like them, you know. If we are dependent on the people who are our role models in life, then it's not bad, it's very good. But when we become somehow rather dependent on people who are not so good, then it's very dangerous only. So. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, it was very nice insights, those 2 points which you shared. First time I'm hearing like this also, but it was really relevant. And my question was, when we compare these two ways of fulfilling the emotions, one is having a friend, another one is preaching. So I wanted to know whether what is the proportion which we need to work upon it. Is it 50-50, both are equally important? Or it is like, because sometimes we may not be able to have both. So can we have some priority, or it is?
Yeah, people are different. So there is no standard formula which would be applicable to everyone. It depends on case to case. Some people are more, dependent on this. Some people are less. Some people are naturally become easily close to others. Some people are more introverted. It's difficult for them to become close. So, you have to decide for yourself. I don't think there is a standard formula. You may be quite fulfilled just by having fulfilling preaching relationship. That's also fine. Even if you don't have too close friends, but ideally, both things should be there. Ideally. But we're living not in the world which is not ideal, so the ideal situation is difficult to expect. So it's just a question of adjustment or approximation.
When it comes to friendship, thank you, my very nice class. It was inspired. So, when it comes to friendship, we have heard Grahayatuko Vanetako Sadabolo Haridako. Whether you are a householder or you are a brahmachari sannyasi, whatever, but always take the names of Krishna. So, when we see across town or in whichever situation he may be, but he is having great eagerness for reading Bhagavatam, for chanting the holy names. And as a brahmachari, do I need to see that he is not a brahmachari, so I should be away from him? So that if I associate, but he has eagerness. So do I need to have a concern regarding whom I associate with?
If you see somebody with great spiritual eagerness, you should associate with such person, because we want to learn and we want to be infected by his eagerness. It's definitely. It doesn't matter, because ultimately for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, it's just external designations. They may not be so important. But at the same time, you have to have a discrimination, and you have to see. If you see somebody who is very sincere and eager, yeah, definitely you can take his example in your life. No problem.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes.
So as we understood that spiritual emotions will take some time, and we can...
They're already there from the beginning, but they might not be strong enough to fulfill all our emotional needs. They're there. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes we feel them, but they may not be strong enough.
So a fulfillment also comes when we please a spiritual master, our seniors.
Yeah.
So because of our incapacities, probably we may not be able to reach there and get that spiritual fulfillment. And as you very nicely explained, that we can make sure that we get this accessible emotional fulfillment and go on in the brahmacharya ashram life. But it will be, will it be a good thinking that we start here and eventually we should aim that yes, we should go on and have that spiritual fulfillment. It should not be on a permanent that we are here.
Of course. We have to see ourselves in dynamic. It's very important in development, definitely. We should not, say that I am like this and I will always be like this. No, we should be dynamic. That's actually a beautiful little Sanskrit wisdom. The word Atma means from the root dhatu at, and the dhatu at means the constant movement. Satatam gamanam. So, Atma is dynamic. It's a dynamic principle. So we have to be always developing internally. Otherwise, there will be boredom.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your wonderful insights. My question was like the emotions which we feel from the preaching, which fulfills us. So that is by praying to the Lord and praying to the Prabhupada. So are these not spiritual emotions only?
Of course. So, therefore, I didn't say from the beginning that I'm talking about material emotions or whatever. There was always a mixture, but what I said about two easiest ways in brahmachari life to get emotions. And therefore, I purposefully didn't speak about, chanting the holy name as the way to get emotions. It is also, but I was speaking about something. And there is a mixture, definitely. When you have spiritual friendship as a friend, there is a mixture also of spiritual emotions as well, because he's your friend, because he also has the same ideals, same values. So I'm not really separating one from another. I'm speaking about this side of our nature, that we're emotional being, that we have to take care of.
If there are no questions, then we can take next topic.
Yeah, I only have 20 more minutes to go, even less. So, it's a very interesting topic about cooperation. I don't want to have just to give a pep talk or to kind of give you some slogans, but I want to share little insights in this regard. That cooperation, it's actually very difficult in this life, because the natural tendency for the human being in this material world is to be competitive. And this competitive spirit, I want to be better. And Srila Prabhupada very successfully employed this spirit of competition among the devotees. He started this, book distribution competition, and we all know how exciting it is. Somebody is, number one, somebody is number two. And in this world, everyone wants to become number one. Number one, actually, this is, there is a joke. There is a little story, but it's a joke. So supposedly it's from some ancient tradition. And when the Lord created the soul, of course we know that the soul has never been created, but the story goes like this. When the Lord created the soul, He also, the first thing which He whispered in her ears, or His ears, is that you're the best. And then he sent this soul here. So we all coming with this mantra. I'm the best, I'm the best. So therefore this competitive spirit is there. And this competitive spirit is actually matsari. It's matsarati, I am better than others. And if you see that somebody is better than you, you become envious. And therefore, the cooperation becomes difficult because of this. And we can see how the society is being destroyed because of this competition spirit everywhere. Therefore, to cooperate, we need to really work hard to kind of push down this competitive spirit, the spirit of competition, and to exchange the spirit of competition for the spirit of love and cooperation. And therefore, Prabhupada very aptly said that your love to me will be proven by the way you cooperate with each other for the advancement or for the fulfilling this mission. So he didn't say cooperation, he said specifically cooperation, not just cooperation, but cooperation for the mission. And it basically means that we have to understand that for the mission we have to cooperate, and this is the most valuable thing which can be there. That's Prabhupada's desire. For Prabhupada's sake, this is the highest possible value. Sometimes people try to say that, you know, that being right, I have seen that sometimes people, they are stressing their righteousness. Why there is some quarrel? Because I'm right, he is wrong. That may be, but if you're right or not is not so important. What is important is that you're not cooperating with the other people. We have this idea that the highest value, psychologically highest value for us is that, you know, I'm right, I know what to do, I know how it is right. But from Krishna's point of view, this is not the highest value. The highest value is how you relate to other people and how you cooperate with other people for the higher goal to fulfill together. You know, whether you're right or wrong is a secondary. You may be right, somebody else may be wrong, but if you overstress this, I'm right and he is wrong, and because of this, you destroy the unity or destroy this spirit of cooperation. This is not so valuable in the eyes of Krishna and in the eyes of Prabhupada. And therefore Prabhupada, he is saying that actually when there is this dissension, I'm right and he's wrong, and the other party says, no, we are right, he is wrong, it basically means that none of them have Krishna. Because Prabhupada said very strongly in this purport about Prachetas, this famous purport where he says that the Lord was so pleased with Prachetas because they were cooperating with each other, because they were 10 of them, but they had one heart. 10 of them only had one heart and one opinion. Prabhupada said, in Krishna consciousness, there is no question of different opinions. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that everyone thinks the same, but it means that the interest of Krishna is in the center. And we are not, you know, insisting on our opinions, on our righteousness. We are trying to fulfill the common goal, and for this common goal we are ready to even, you know, put aside our righteousness or our own views for the common goal, for the unity's sake. And therefore, this unity is a very difficult thing in this material world. It will not happen automatically. Automatically what will happen? The competition will happen automatically. I'm better than you. We are better. Our temple is better. That will happen automatically. To establish cooperation, it's a hard work. You have to come, you have to invest your time, you have to invest your energy, you have to really try to know each other, because what happens, usually people, they naturally have this competitive spirit. I'm better, he's not so good, and then, you don't see the other person. You don't, especially when you're equal. The competition is only possible between the equals. If somebody is too high, there is no competitive spirit with you. You are ready to say, yeah, you're great. But if somebody is almost the same as you, but little better, oh, this is very bad. If somebody is way better than you, then you are not envious to him. You say, yes, please teach me how to become like you. But if somebody is little better than you, oh no, this is too much. This is such an apparat. How dare he become better than me in this regard? He's doing this better or that thing better. So, and I'm saying, because we're all humans, I also sometimes feel this sort of feelings. So, to remove this, to get rid of this, you really have to know the other person very closely. If you know the other person, to whom you may feel little enviousness that he is better, he is more successful in this regard, he is doing this better, he is preaching better, this and that, to remove this element which will actually destroy or darken our relationship, you really have to come a little closer and to really understand what is other person. When you personally know him and you have this close relationship, then the competitive spirit will go away. And that's also, it's actually, there was one point, I spent quite some time on GBC, and I know GBC, and on several occasions, or a number of occasions, I was told by the old GBC members. I only became GBC member in '96, which was already a different era. And all GBC members told me, you don't know what the GBC was like immediately after Prabhupada's disappearance. They said it was impossible to be there. There was such a high spirit of competition between all these big leaders. And when they would come to one room, it would be just it was so much energy exchange was there, and not necessarily very pleasant energies, because they were powerful leaders. And when the leaders are powerful, they all have this spirit. I'm better than you, and I will prove to everyone that I'm better. I know better. So how to remove this? There is only one way to remove this, is to get together and to do something together and to know each other better, to speak with each other, and that will naturally replace this competitive spirit and give room for personal exchanges and personal relationship. And for that you need time. You cannot do it just as a formal thing, we come here once a month or once every 3 months or whatever, and then we spend some time. No, you have to have some informal time for some informal exchanges or some, heart-to-heart exchanges, something like this. Then the cooperation will become very natural. Otherwise, it will be just a high ideal, which we will try to impose upon ourselves, but it will never be fulfilled really. It will be just a formality. So, to really establish some unity which would increase the power of our movement many folds. You know, hundreds and hundreds of folds. If you put yourself together, your hearts together, not only your minds together, but if you put your hearts together, then you will be able to conquer over this Bangalore within 18 days. Pandavas. You know, it's actually the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Duryodhana, he lists first the heroes from the Pandava side, and then he lists the heroes on his side. And then, very surprisingly, he says, aparyaptam madasmakam, he says that our force is not really, even though from the numbers point of view, he had greater forces, he says, aparyaptam madasmakam, tadasmakam, that our strength of ours is not sufficient. Aparyaptam, it's very clear. Of course, you can say aparyaptam is immeasurable. You can also say this. But not without a reason, he uses this word which has two meanings, immeasurable and insufficient. Because he knows that there is inner weakness. Among the Kaurava chieftains, there was high competition, and when Bhishma was the commander-in-chief, Karna said, I will not even take part in this battle. And somebody else didn't really like it, and so many other problems were there. And in Pandava's side, Drishtadyumna was the commander-in-chief. Drishtadyumna is not such a great hero. He is not a great hero like Arjuna, like Bhima. He was there all the 18 days, commander-in-chief, and everyone was obeying him. What does it say? It says that they have unity. For them, this competition is not important. For Kauravas, it's very important. I'm better than you. How dare you become the commander-in-chief? Yeah, I will not, fulfill your orders. I am more, powerful than you. How you can give me orders? So on and so forth. So why? And therefore, Duryodhana says, aparyaptam tadasmakam. Our strength is not sufficient. And Prabhupada said, I could conquer over the world if I had unity among my disciples. So it's not, it's actually their necessity which we have to establish, but we have to understand that to establish this ideal, we really have to invest time and energy and not be stingy. Of course, we're all busy, we all have so many other engagements, we all have to preach, but it's a very important duty to establish unity, and for that you need to generously give your time, come together, spend time, and the result will be very, very amazing, very wonderful. You will be amazed yourself by the results when the real unity will be established. If the real unity will be established, not just casual unity or formal unity, but the real unity, it's very important. So don't be like Kaurava's army with so many heroes, but totally divided internally. Be like Pandava's army. They're less in number, but much more powerful, because They have personal relationship with each other. So that's a little thing which I can say. I only have a few more minutes to be, so maybe there's some questions.
Hare Krishna. Any questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. What we have seen is that even the brahmacharis want to come together only when there is a senior sannyasi who is addressing the group. They are not so inspired to really hear and...
because everyone knows the truth himself.
So this is, I feel, perceived as an obstacle for coming together, one thing. And second is, yes, as you told, that just coming formally together once in a month also may not be sufficient. So how we can work more? Yes, we know the reason also, our engagements, etc. But everybody, because even I see in my personal book reading group which I do online, it becomes so difficult to keep together. It requires really conscious effort to get them together.
That's why I said it requires really conscious efforts to get together. You will do it if you value it. If this is the highest value, you will do it. If you have values which are higher than this, you will do something which you value more. The situation which you describe, if you say it in other words, it's only like this. Yes, cooperation is nice, but we have something much more valuable than this. And therefore we don't have time for this, therefore we're not going to invest in this, therefore we're not coming when there is no sannyasis around. It's just betraying the real way of thinking. That this is, formally, for pro forma say, you say it's important. But in reality it's not important. You have something which supersedes the importance of this, overshadows the importance of cooperation. It basically means you didn't understand internally how important it is. And therefore you have other priorities. That's it.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, one useful technique you told us to how to overcome envy towards some person. That if you are envious to somebody, you have to go closer to him. But sometimes I feel that that envy itself is the cause which stops us to go closer to somebody.
Of course. So how to? Therefore, you have to make efforts. If you understand that this is somebody who is important, and you understand that your feeling towards him is not correct, it's something which is, it's a condemnation which is there. You just make a conscious effort to do it, to overcome this. And it will be difficult in the beginning. It will not happen immediately. But the conscious efforts have to be there. And, anytime when we do conscious efforts, we are actually getting free from some subconscious anarthas which are contaminating our hearts. There are so many subconscious programs within our heart. And this is called karma. And when we're doing something which is comfortable to us, we are more or less living with this program which is there. If we want to overcome this program which is already there, we have to do some conscious efforts. And any conscious efforts is very fulfilling because it, every time when we conquer over these programs which are within us, we feel that, yes, we feel little victory is there. Means I became less a karmic robot, which I was before. Otherwise we're just karmic robots. We're only doing something which is already comfortable, which is already, which we would do anyway. So what's the value? What's the point?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So regarding this envy, Prabhuji Suvan mentioned a very nice point that if we are envious with someone, we find it difficult to make that conscious effort. So I would just like to share something which is helping me in this regard. I heard in my Guru Maharaj's lecture, he told that if we can meditate on these points, things become a little simpler. First of all, he said that if we are envious of someone, we should think that Krishna has a unique relationship with that devotee also and with me also. Second point, the advancement of that devotee in whichever field because of which I am becoming envious is not an obstacle in my progress in Krishna consciousness. Thirdly, instead of becoming envious, if I can rather try to see how I can improve my service and try to learn from him. This is exactly the conscious effort which we have to make. So if we can improve our appreciation for that devotee by trying to learn something from him, by meditating that he also has a unique relationship, I also have a unique relationship, and this is not an obstacle.
Yes.
So somehow I've been trying to meditate on this and it is helping me.
Definitely.
And so I just want to share.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So you told, so when we equal to the devotees, when we doing equal, so if one person do little bit high, so is very much, he is getting envy some. So how to overcome this disorder?
Yeah, that's what I told. Just come closer to this person, try to serve this person, try to really understand his heart, because you can only become envious if you a little bit demonize this person internally. This process is going on. You always find some faults in him. This is how envy works. You're envious, and then, as I said, the rationalization takes place. The intelligence try to, justify your envy. Oh, he's saying this, and he's doing this, and somebody told you something bad about him, and you thought, oh, I always knew this, and So, because you don't know this person really personally, this devotee on a personal level. If you know him better, and then even if somebody says to you something, or even if you think something bad about him, you always counteract it. There is some antidote to this poison of envy. It's just, you know him personally, and and especially if you did some personal service to him, and some reciprocation took place, then it will be very easy. So that's the way to counteract it. I have to go now. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanande. So I hope to see you again very soon.